Hi there, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, and welcome to this RSB webinar. We are just going to give a minute or two for people to get online. You can see the lobby filling up fast. And then we will kick things off in just a minute or two. Nice to see some familiar faces and some new ones too. So for those joining, we're just waiting another minute or so before we kick off to let people move through the lobby and into the webinar. Okie dokie, let's kick things off. So welcome everyone and thank you. Morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. A very warm welcome to today's RSB webinar, which is called Built to Evolve, Unlocking the Next Chapters in Book and Claim. My name is Hannah Walker, and alongside my fantastic colleague, Jill Alker, I will be your host today. So before we begin, I want to give you just a quick reminder that we are going to be recording today's session, and the recording will be made available to everyone who registered next week. We'll also have time, hopefully, for questions, so please use the Q&A function and to post any questions as they come to your mind. We will try to answer as many as we can live. We can also send you written responses if need be. So today's discussion explores how the RSB booking claim system is evolving, expanding access beyond fuel producers to include transport service providers like airlines and shipping companies, as well as how it's evolving beyond aviation. These updates mark a major step in RSB's work in building a practical and credible booking claim system that responds to sector and market realities. As the title says, Built to Evolve is about how the system continues to adapt, grow, and change, responding to market needs, growing stakeholder trust, and driving credible decarbonisation in various hard-to-abate sectors. We're also taking what we've learned and achieved in aviation to both refine our work in that sector and expand the solution into new areas. And this begins with maritime, as you'll hear today, but also as you're here today, we're also now looking ahead to sectors like steel, chemicals, and beyond, building on that trusted system and RSB's multi-stakeholder approach for further impact. We're joined today by experts from Stegra, NORDEN, and DHL Global Forwarding, alongside, of course, our book and claim superstar, Jill, to explore a little bit more about what this evolution means in practice. To start us off, though, I'm very pleased to introduce Elena Schmidt, RSB's Executive Director, who has been a champion of RSB's book and claim framework since day zero, I think with our very first manual produced and published all the way back in 2015. Elena is going to talk to us about the journey of RSB's book and claim system, how it has evolved, and where it's going. So with that, I'm going to pass over to Elena.
Good morning and good afternoon, and a warm welcome to today's webinar. When we discuss book and claim today, it is remarkable to consider how it has evolved over time. It has transitioned from a basic standard that we already first developed in 2015. Actually, it was my first project when I started in the RSB as the RSB's new standards director. We adapted this standard for its use in the aviation sector in 2020 and implemented the first pilots from 2021 with our partners at RBP, Etihad, JetBlue, Microsoft, Singapore Airlines, Total Energies, World Energy, and United Airlines. We developed a digital registry that we launched as the first book and claim system for aviation in 2023, and more recently led the development of an ecosystem of interoperable registries and evolved the system into further sectors such as shipping and steel. Today, book and claim serves as a crucial solution for some of the most challenging sectors to decarbonize. Consider the challenge of having a limited number of production locations for the most innovative fuels and materials, while global demand continues to rise. The book and claim system effectively connects supply and demand. Book and claim also provides a robust framework for credible claims. In the RSB, they are supported by a full supply chain, third-party audited life cycle assessments of greenhouse gas and emissions and sustainability certification. Additionally, RSB outlines a trusted method for allocating sustainability claims to achieve reductions in Scope 1 and Scope 3 emissions. Book and claim is even more because of its ability to evidence credible claims across the entire value chain. It provides a robust foundation for corporates to support the development of innovative projects in sustainable aviation fuels, marine fuels, and steel via long-term offtake agreements. Book and claim has thus become a tool to support project financing, supporting a project's bankability when other supporting mechanisms like incentives are too weak to effect change. Book and claim has evolved from a chain of custody model into a crucial enabler for transitioning hard-to-abate sectors to achieve net zero goals. And this is why credibility is so important. Together as a global collective, we have to protect the credibility of book and claim. We have seen in the road transport market with the recent reports of mislabeled used cooking oil, and in carbon markets what happens when credibility is at stake. At RSB, everyone in the team deeply cares about credibility. And we safeguard the credibility of our system by our design as a roundtable. By convening a diverse group of stakeholders from around the world across various sectors and value chains. This includes social and environmental NGOs as well as scientific organizations. Our decision-making procedures for the RSB board and the RSB Assembly of Delegates ensure that no single perspective can dominate, and drives our organization to develop the best solution for everyone. You can observe this process when we meet in December in Geneva. Our standard development is third-party validated through ISEAL and adheres to standard-setting best practices. Furthermore, we ensure our credibility through transparency by publishing audit reports, retirement statements, organizational procedures, annual reports, and financial documents. RSB is dedicated to transparency, and you can review all this information and documentation online. Thirdly, we protect our credibility through a deep commitment for continuous improvement that is ingrained in our organization's DNA. We began with a basic book and claim standard and a foundational registry. Driven by our ambition for continuous improvement and our approach to engaging with our global stakeholder community, we learned through pilots designed for responsive development. As a result, RSB has established the global best practice for book and claim and operates the most trusted system in this area, which continues to evolve every day. One recent development is the introduction of a new role, the facilitator role created in collaboration with our partner Airbus, which addresses a critical challenge. This new role addresses the difficulties smaller operators face in accessing SAF. Through this role, Airbus and RSB streamlined and reduced risk in the process for both operators and suppliers. We are excited to discuss now the further evolution of the RSB book and claim system. This system has developed over time, expanding beyond aviation and now extending into shipping. We have been conducting key pilots and have been in discussions with stakeholders in the steel and iron sectors for over a year to explore the application of book and claim in these industries as well. I would like to express my gratitude to all the speakers today, as well as our partners and stakeholders who contributed to the success of the RSB book and claim system. Together, we have built and continue to evolve a tool that is so crucial for sector transformation and for achieving our climate targets.
Thank you to Elena for that wonderful introduction and that really important message on both the journey and the multi-stakeholder development that is so important for the development of the RSB book and claim system. I am pleased to now hand over to Jill Alker, RSB's book and claim manager. Jill is going to walk us through all the details of the latest system updates, explaining what it means for everyone affected and how this evolution strengthens the system's credibility, inclusiveness, and real-world impact. Jill, over to you.
Great, thank you, Hannah. As you've heard, the RSB's book and claim system is constantly evolving, and this new evolution involves the inclusion of Scope 1 actors. It's the first stage of our expansion into the maritime sector, and it lays the foundation for future expansions into materials such as steel and concrete, but it's also proving to be quite useful for the aviation sector, as you'll hear. But first of all, what do we mean by Scope 1 actors? So here, you're probably familiar with this. You can see the greenhouse gas protocol diagram that describes all the different scopes that are used in company emissions reporting. Scope 1 are direct emissions, mainly from fuel combustion for transport, heating or industrial uses. Scope 3 are mainly for emissions from electricity use. And Scope 3 are emissions from the supply chain. So a Scope 1 actor is a company that's combusting fuel to create a transport activity, such as a transport service provider like an airline or a ship operator, or it could be a company combusting fuel to create a product such as steel or a bioplastics manufacturer. So over the next few slides, I'll explain how these Scope 1 actors' roles will be evolving as part of this new update. This is how the current book and claim system works with the current version of the manual, version 4.1. I'm just going to explain this quickly so that it lays the foundations for later on. So let's consider two supply chains. The one on the right, the one on the left of the screen has access to a local source of certified SAF, but the local airline doesn't have any requirement for an emissions claim. So perhaps they've already met their needs in that reporting period, or they're located in a jurisdiction where emissions reductions are not required. And on the right, in a different geographical location, there's a supply chain where the airlines and the corporates have a requirement to reduce their emissions, but they don't have any access to local sources of SAF, or the local sources have already been used up. And this is where book and claim comes into play. A SAF producer supplies NEAT certified SAF to a SAF supplier. The fuel supply is provided with a proof of sustainability document, and the SAF supplier blends the NEAT SAF with the jet fuel and decouples that physical fuel from the sustainability attributes, selling the physical fuel into an airport locally without any sustainability claim. And meanwhile, the sustainability attributes are registered into the RSB digital registry. The proof of sustainability that's generated by the supplier for the blended fuel is surrendered into the registry, and the attributes are converted into book and claim units. And one book and claim unit is equivalent to 1 metric tonne of NEAT certified SAF. The organisation registering those BCUs, in this case the SAF supplier, is required to hold an RSB book and claim trader certification, and that certification ensures that the rules that are set out in the manual are followed, including making sure that the physical SAF is sold on without any sustainability claims. At this point, The BCUs can then be transferred through the digital registry to airlines and corporates that are looking to reduce their air transport emissions. And when those organisations are ready to make the claim associated with the SAF, they instruct the registry to issue a retirement statement. And this document is the document that substantiates their claim. Those retirement statements are publicly available for anyone to view on our retirements table. So currently only SAF producers and suppliers can register the attributes of SAF into the registry, but this will soon change. So this slide shows the two main benefits of book and claim. The first is that it connects the limited supply locations with the global demand without having to create bespoke logistics and incurring all the costs and emissions associated with those. Here I've borrowed a Sky Energy image from their latest market outlook report, which highlights the mismatch between the global supply and the global supply and the global demand. But these mismatches exist not just across continents, but also at a country level or even at a sub-country level. The RSB book and claim system allows suppliers to sell the physical fuel locally as if it's regular jet fuel, but sell the attributes anywhere in the world, meaning that the size of the production plant doesn't need to be limited to the quantity of fuel that the local airports need, and that can really benefit the economies of scale. The second benefit is that by separating the sustainable fuel into two products, the fuel and its attributes, that enables the green fuel sustainability benefits to be exclusively allocated to the companies who are willing to pay for it. This allows for green premium sharing, which can be extremely commercially beneficial, particularly when those price premiums are so great as they are in aviation fuel. But the way our book and claim system currently works, with the supplier registering the fuel into the registry, these two benefits are still inextricably linked. Increasingly, organisations that use the physical sustainable fuels, those Scope 1 actors we mentioned earlier, would also like to access the cost-sharing benefit without necessarily needing the global access to limited supply benefit. And this is particularly important as we expand the system into maritime and material sectors, where the Scope 1 actors, the ship operators, the industrial operators, have much more control over the fuels that they use and where their local customers have limited requirements for the sustainable products. So this is one of the major changes that we're in the process of implementing with the most recent update of the book and claim manual. And this is what we've seen before on the previous slide, and we will continue to support this use case. But after the changes have been implemented, we will also allow, it's a bit slow, but you can see the transition. We will also allow airlines and ship operators that use the physical fuel to also register the attributes into the registry and to transfer those attributes to their corporate customers. In this case, those organisations will be required to hold the book and claim trader certification and will be regularly audited to ensure that they follow the chain of custody book and claim rules. And in particular, as I said before, ensuring that they don't pass on the claims as well directly to their ticket or freight customers. So we're going to pause there for a few moments just to chat to some of the organisations that are thinking along these lines, some of our partners that we're working on with existing pilots, and also pilot partners that we hope to work with in the future. So I would like to introduce, I'm hoping that Louise is on, can't see her at the moment, but I'd like to introduce Jenny Scheiber from DHL, Johan Runanen and Louise Dobler. Is Louise on with us yet?
Yes.
Yes, excellent. Okay, fantastic. So Louise works as a decarbonisation manager at NORDEN, where she has a strong focus on decarbonisation and developing climate solutions. She led with the development of NORDEN's book and claim solution and is involved in discussions on the topic across the ecosystem, including with the book and claim community and the Catalyst registry. Jenny is the head of transport decarbonisation at DHL's supply chain. She works on registry solutions for their air and ocean freight forwarding division of DHL, as well as book and claim and direct decarbonisation solutions for the road transport sector globally. She's been instrumental in developing and implementing the air and ocean freight insetting product Go Green Plus, including inventory management, external verification, and integration with industry frameworks and practices. Johan is heading the environmental attribute certificate work at Stegra, a green steel manufacturer in northern Sweden, and has been leading on the development work on the first of a kind EAC for green steel between Stegra and Microsoft. So welcome to you all, and thank you for joining us today. I'm going to start with shipping. So I'd like to talk to Louise first of all. The maritime sector is the transition is well underway, but it's complex, and there are many different fuel types and shifting regulations. So from a NORDEN's perspective, what is the biggest challenge right now in trying to use or scale sustainable marine fuels? Is it availability, cost, traceability, or something else?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Jill, for the invitation to the webinar, and hi everyone. I think like probably for any industry, it always comes down to the cost. I mean, those fuels, those sustainable maritime fuels, or whatever we want to call them, low GHG emission fuels, they come at a significant premium, and so that means that to be able to scale them and to be viable, we need to find a way to find demand for that, to be able to share the premium. And so there's two sources of demand. There's obviously so there's the regulation side that's for which you can then recover cost because you're forced to scale your use of sustainable maritime fuel. And then there's the customer side. If we look at the regulatory side in shipping, we are now the Fuel EU Maritime requires that we start using some low emission fuels within the shipping industry as of this year, but the volumes basically that is required to meet the intensity target is pretty low. So it's still, I mean, it's going to ramp up throughout the years, but it's still not very massive as of now. And the global regulation that we were all hoping for in the maritime industry, or at least most of us were hoping for in the maritime industry from the International Maritime Organization, was postponed earlier in October for another year. So that means that kind of this demand from regulation we expect to still stay fairly low for now until we actually get this global regulation hopefully adopted next year, which means probably nothing until 2029 at the earliest in terms of entering into force. So really then that only leaves the second, or mostly just leaves the second demand driver to be able to allow us to scale up our use of low emission fuel. And so that's the demand from customers. For now, we're seeing that still the willingness to pay in general for customer is fairly low and fairly limited. But very much for us, the biggest challenge when it comes to scaling the use of those fuel is to be able to tap into where there is demand to share those significant premium.
And so my next question is, what is the main advantage as you see it for book and claim in maritime?
Yeah, I think I've been working on the topic for now quite some time. So I see I could go on that one for a long time, but I see probably 3, maybe 4, I would say, main advantage when it comes to using book and claim in maritime. I think first of all, obviously that means that we can decarbonize our own operations. So in NORDEN, we own and we operate some vessels across the world. Those vessels run traditionally on fossil fuels. So being able to switch to low emission fuel, that also means that we can reduce our scope 1. And so that's great, obviously. And that means that we can also then thereby offer low emission transportation services to our customers. And this book and claim and the flexibility that book and claim brings being able to dissociate what's physically happening to who is claiming the reduction means that we can offer low emission transportation to all of our customers, regardless of where their cargo is moving in the world. We still have limited geographical availability of those fuels. So we're not able to bunker low emission fuel everywhere around the world, which otherwise, if we had to stay to this physical link, means that we wouldn't be able to offer low emission transportation to a customer for whom their cargo is not passing through one of those ports around the world where the fuel is available. So that's obviously one, like the first, I would say, pro in terms of helping us to bridge that mismatch between where we see that there might be demand and where we see, for us, where we can supply those fuels physically. And then I said that there were several advantages. Another one probably that is worth mentioning, and going back to basically the business model of NORDEN, we're into the tanker business and bulk transportation. So that means everything that is commodities, pretty much everything that doesn't get transported into a container. So we're typically quite far up into the company's value chain. We transport, the grain and aluminium, cement, all of those things that are pretty embedded far up into the supply chain. So we're not exposed to the consumer market. It's pretty far down. And that's typically, as we know, the consumer markets, consumer-facing companies that have a higher willingness to pay. And so Book and Claim also, in that sense, help us tap into some demand from some buyers that we may not be exposed to naturally from the cargoes that we transport, but do have some maritime emissions. So, for example, we have been working with Microsoft and Meta. Obviously, we don't transport anything for them directly, but for example, going into data centers or offices and buildings, there's lots of cement, of minerals, and so on that do get transported, and so participate into the emission footprint of those companies linked to those construction. And those materials do get transported at some point on a vessel like ours around the world. So for us, I think that's very helpful to be able to tap into some customer demand as well, which we may not be necessarily exposed to directly, but which might have, which may be a little bit further ahead in terms of being able to share those premium. And then maybe the last one, which I guess, I recognize that this webinar has been shifted, and I hope that this last point would have gone a different way, but I think it's still valid. It's really the point of preparing for future regulations. So when we originally discussed, Jill, about this webinar, we were all expecting in maritime that the International Maritime Organization would have voted the net zero framework, which would have required from 2028 onwards to use quite significant amounts of low emission fuels. Now we're still a little bit holding our breath and waiting to see what's happening next year when they're going to revote this. We hope it's gonna work out, but I'm convinced that at some point, I don't know when, but at some point we will have global regulation. I very much hope so. And when these global regulations are gonna start hitting, it's also pretty high emission reductions that we need to achieve, and probably even more so the longer we wait, the more sharp the curve is going to be. So really being able to already start and continue scaling our use of low emission fuels means that we're just going to be more ready for whenever those regulations are going to start. It takes a lot of work to work with the owners of the vessels, to work with the suppliers, to build the experience, do some mistakes, learn from those mistakes, and so on, to be confident to then roll that out into your everyday operations. So I think that's also in a way one of the kind of side advantage of Book and Claim, that this enables us to continue scale our use of low emission fuel, so that we feel even more prepared when those regulations will come.
Yeah, thanks, Louise. I think that's a really good last point, that we all get a chance to try this out and learn some lessons before we really need to implement for regulation. Sorry. Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to Jenny now. So in freight and logistics, this is an area that connects multiple transport modes, air, sea and road, and DHL operate across these different sectors. So I was wondering, what are the elements that are critical for success for a book and claim system across these different elements in a supply chain, please?
Yeah, thank you so much, Jill. And I'm trying to add a little bit of a bird's eye perspective here on the logistic industry in a little broader sense. And yeah, as you said, it's really critical to develop and operate a system that integrates all elements of the supply chain. Hardly ever we have one particular single piece of transport by itself. In the most cases, and in the most climate impactful cases, we have a chain of transport involving different players, different transport modes. So we really need a system that integrates all of these elements, and that includes all the transport modes eventually and all the participants, as various as they may be. And they also may be on different levels of maturity, of course, in this journey. So we need to develop something that takes everyone along the way and that allows everyone to play their very, very vital role in this overall endeavor. So we really need to allow all the players, from the fuel producer in the very beginning to the end user at the end of the chain, to make credible and lasting claims. And for that, as it already appears, we need a high level of integration and a very high level of alignment between all of these players. And we need the book and claim system that underlies this to really base on robust and industry-wide accepted frameworks and guidelines, which are designed to interconnect these supply chains. And I believe the examples, as you, Jill, have shared earlier, what RSB is currently working on, so to expand the options of trader certification, as well as also our ongoing endeavor to expand the system to marine, are very good examples of this. And this is really a journey that we need to continue. And in the end, I think all our goal here should be to have a level playing field for all of us and to ensure resilience. In the end of the day, I think we are all interested to really make an impact and to ensure we are all in line with Greenhouse Gas Protocol and SBTi. So we all share the common goal. And we believe that registries really are a key enabler here because, amongst others, they ensure standardization, transparency, also automation, which is becoming more and more important here, also in terms of manual effort involved still at some parts of this. And above all, they create also a forum for collaboration as the one today. So we see a very vital role here for registries.
Thank you. And also on the topic of audits and third-party audits, verification bodies, registries, how important do you see the role of this is in book and claim, and making those claims credible, etc.?
Yeah, of course, it's an absolutely fundamental role. As I already mentioned, we all want to be able to not only do something good and feel good about it, but also to actually claim and to be actually aligned with all the existing frameworks out there and the existing institutions and guidelines like SBTi, for example. So there is an absolutely fundamental rule to third-party verification at all different levels of this process. We all need to rely on the things happening around us being just as credible and just as trustful as what we are doing on our own end. And really, again, the goal here must be that all of the players can be guaranteed to make trustworthy and, of course, also transparent claims for everyone else to be aware of what's happening. And third-party verification is really indispensable in this. So once more, I would want to come back to also a little bit what we talk about here in this webinar today. Registries will play a key role in this, in streamlining this process, as it can become very complex with the verification on each and every stage of the value chain. And of course, in adding an additional level of credibility and integrity. So we see also that it is demanded by end users. It is seen as something that is backing up existing processes that can add another level of trustfulness. And what we also can observe in everyday life is that there is some special value to those registries or platforms that are able to interconnect the supply chain already, and that are able to combine multiple transport modes, because these kind of platforms, of course, massively simplify the application of book and claim to the end user, who will, in most cases, probably have more than one transport mode, and who will want to be able to base their claims on credible rules across all the different transport modes. So we want to once more emphasize this, we see a very vital role here for registries.
Great, Yeah, thank you, Jenny. That's great. So moving on now to steel, I'd like to bring in Johan on the next couple of questions. So steel's a slightly different challenge and something that we're starting to look at in a bit more detail. So I've got a couple of questions for you. Given that there hasn't been an AEC mechanism for steel yet, could you walk us through how you and Stegra have been working with it? What's similar, what's different to fuels, for example, and what are the main principles that you've implemented?
Thanks, Jill. Thanks for having me and Stegra on the webinar. It's a pretty broad question. I mean, we could speak an hour about this more. No, so I think, to start off with, we're really kind of standing on the shoulders of giants in the work that we're doing from the work that, has been done in all the other industries such as, REC and SAF and biofuels. So it's great to be able to learn from them and take what works for steel, and then we have to make some new things up as well. And one thing that is different, of course, is steel is a very physical product. Like, it can't be blended like a fuel, for example. But we see, there's, I guess also, to be clear, like, this was not a very clear-cut case for Stegra from the beginning. We saw that there are huge possibilities with this. We could enter into markets easier outside of the EU. We could, target customers that aren't steel buyers directly. We can get a green premium for all of the production. It would be easier to finance new sites if we can sign offtake agreements on EAC. But we also saw, of course, that there's, what if we can't find a way of mitigating risks of double claiming, double counting, double issuing, etc. And so that's why we entered into a 12-month project together with Microsoft and RMI to really kind of turn every stone that we could think of to see, is it possible to create an EEC mechanism for steel that really captures the value and mitigates the risks, and some of the principles that we've implemented for that is, one is to, I guess, always use conservative benchmarks to not inflate any reduction numbers. We chose an EU average for steel in the EU, and that gets refreshed. It gets updated every year. In steel, it's also really important to distinguish between, like, what drives decarbonization really. And in steel, you have both scrap and iron, and it's the iron part that really drives decarbonization of the industry. So we want to create the right incentives within the EAC mechanism as well, so that you can't just produce scrap-based steel and produce EACs from that. So with that, we have very clearly defined qualifications for the product. It needs to contain a certain level of iron. It needs to have certain thresholds for GHG performance. And on the double claiming risks, we also wanted to make sure that the EAC is not only a paper or a digital product, it's also a process. So how we do it is also really important. And in our case, we cannot issue an EAC before we have delivered a steel coil with a conventional steel benchmark to a customer that has accepted that steel coil. So in essence, the buyer of the physical steel needs to accept that, yes, the ownership has changed, and we accept a higher GHG emissions profile than we would have gotten otherwise. And we have a lot of contractual language around that as well. yeah, I think those are the main principles, and to not optimize on kind of revenue in the short term, but make sure that we take this first mover advantage and also be part of setting a precedent that is functional for the steel market. What is needed to really drive change, drive transformation of the steel industry.
Okay, great. My next question is, do you think that a mechanism like book and claim could really help to create clearer market signals for green steel?
Yes, if done correctly, I think for sure. I mean, Stegra, what we're doing is we're building green hydrogen, green iron, and green steel, and it's all project financed. So we need, much like SAF, so we need offtake agreements to really facilitate that that project financing. And if we could use book and claim for that, if we could have EAC offtake agreements that are bankable, it would be a lot easier to finance new green iron plants, new green steel plants. So that would be, I would say, pivotal for the whole steel industry, to be honest.
Right, okay. So before I thank you and move on, I just want to check in with Hannah to see if we've got any questions in the Q&A for the panelists.
I think that all of these questions look like they are targeted at you, Jill.
Okay, then in that case, I will say thank you so much to Johan, Jenny and Louise for sharing your insights and explaining how you see the future of book and claim in your organisations. We're hugely indebted to you always for the knowledge and the insights that you bring and allowing us to develop the systems for the industry. So thanks again. Please stay on the line. We've got a few more slides and then we'll have Q&A session at the end. Okay. Okay, so moving on, I'm just going to explain a little bit of how our system evolves. There's quite a strict procedure and process that we need to follow. All our standards, procedures and guidance documents can be found in our library on our website, and here you can also find the standard that sets out the procedure for developing and modifying our standards and procedures. So Eleanor covered some of the detail earlier in her slot. So whenever we evolve the book and claim system, we have to follow this guidance. And the way it works in practice is that we first seek industry pilot partners, so like NORDEN and DHL, who are looking to evaluate a possible update to our standards. In those pilots, which usually last several months, we go into a huge amount of detail, assessing how the changes could be implemented and what impact they will have on the system and on the wider industry. Once those pilots have been completed, we submit the new version of the standards or the procedures to our members for consultation, and we gather any feedback from the wider industry. And we review that feedback, and based on the responses, we integrate any changes or tweaks that have been suggested. And finally, we present the final version of the amended standard to the RSB board for approval. This slide shows how the RSB's governance brings the whole diverse stakeholders together to guide the work. At the base are 5 chambers representing key stakeholder groups, from producers and processors to markets, social equity, environmental stewardship and government or research. Each chamber elects a representative to the Assembly of Delegates, which acts as the RSB's main decision-making body. The Board of Directors, elected by the Assembly, provide strategic oversight and ensure accountability, and they improve the major policies and standards. And finally, the Executive Director and Secretariat carry out the board's direction, managing daily operations and coordinating the standards and certification work. Together, this system ensures balanced representation, transparency and credibility across all RSB's governance. So what's next? I've just got a few more slides to guide you through some of the other events and activities where you can learn more about book and claim and the evolution that we're going through at the moment. And firstly, we will hold a second public webinar, just like this one, but next week. And this will cover our new approach to additionality in book and claim. So if you'd like to attend that one, please do use the QR code on the screen to register and find out more. Secondly, on the 9th to the 11th of December, we will be holding our annual conference in Geneva. This year, it will be a 2-day event with a collaboration day on the Tuesday, and then a series of workshops on the Tuesday with the flagship day, the main event, on the Wednesday. And then on Thursday will be that assembly of delegates meeting where all the decisions are being made on the standards and the procedures that need to be updated. And within the agenda of the conference, we've got book and claim featuring heavily across the whole agenda, including an entire day of book and claim workshops on day 1, including a book and claim 101, a workshop about the maritime expansion, and some work on the registry recognition and service providers. There'll also be several panel sessions on the flagship day, and also we will include a number of elements of book and claim, including some speakers, including a number of the speakers that you've heard today. So do please consider joining us for the conference as a well-deserved and work-related early Christmas present to yourself. And I think that wraps up the slides that I want to share for today. So we just probably have enough time for a few questions. So Hannah, would you like to facilitate those, please?
Absolutely. So Omalayo has asked, and I know where this one is going, Jill, one of your favorite questions, is it allowed to transfer sustainability attributes to a corporate end user for scope 3 without also transferring to an airline for scope 1?
So this is what we're implementing at the moment. So, so I think what the question is asking here is if a fuel supplier registers a unit into the registry, can they transfer onto a scope 3 without a scope 1 also being included in that transaction mix? And in that case, no, that's not possible. That's what we would call an orphan scope 1 situation. We did conduct quite a lot of work about this a year or so ago, commissioning a consultant to look into this for us. They concluded that if a scope 3 claim has been made, then a scope 1 claim should also be present. And so we have ruled out the ability for a scope 1, orphan scope 1 to exist. There always has to be a scope 1 if there is a scope 3 claimed. Okay.
Thanks, Jill. Okay, then we have one question that's quite long, and I'm going to try and say it without getting my tongue tied. But for simplification, when talking about book and claim, one claim is for scope 1 and one for scope 3. I think it's more true for the airline to be scope 1 and scope 3 category 3, just so there is no confusion and it is not lost. Is there a reason you say just scope 1?
Yes, I think, Ron, you're right. An airline does have both for a unit of SAF. An airline will make a claim on both scope 1 and scope 3 category 3. You're right. We simplify it by just calling it scope 1, but there is a small amount of that emission that should be allocated to scope 3. It's just we use scope 1 to simplify that. So you're quite right, and thank you for pointing it out.
Yeah, just to add to that, I deal with a lot of third-party assurance, and so if they're following the line of the law within these different protocols, it might add some confusion. So maybe a caveat or something, and everyone's doing it. You know, it's not, you know, they always say scope 1, but it might be important to make that distinction.
Absolutely, and one thing that we are in the process of doing is creating some reporting and carbon reporting guidance. So we've created a worked example for people to be able to use which guides them through how they can use book and claim units and retirement statements in their carbon reporting. So if you're interested in having a look at that, please do get in touch and I'll send you a copy.
Thanks, Jill. Thanks, Ron. I think Ron's other question around how does this address the need for additionality is going to be answered next week on the 12th. So I've put the direct link for the registration into the response there for you, Ron. There is a follow-up on Ron's initial question, and I'm going to read this one out. It's from Gabriel von Mueller. Saying, what is RSB's approach to this issue? Is the scope or focus on the initial registration of the fuel? How is the conversion of fuel into a transport service covered? Is RSB neutral with regard to the methods or mechanisms and leaves the responsibility for this to the respective user, so the airline, the freight forwarder, travel agent, customer receiving a transport service?
So I think again, that question could be answered using our worked example for accounting and reporting. Accounting and reporting, even when you're not using book and claim units, is quite a complex procedure. It's something that, you know, if your head is involved in that on a day-to-day basis, you know it inside out. I think for someone who's coming to it fairly fresh, it's quite a complex idea. So our worked example sets everything out step by step, and you know, if you're interested in getting hold of that, then please get in touch with me and I can forward it on to you.
Then, Jill, I think we're out of questions, unless I've missed anything, but I don't see any more. So I think I will just maybe leave this also with another call to action to please join us next week at the additionality webinar. We are using PowerPoint Live, so if you can't quickly get your QR code scanner out, you can just click the slide where it says here, where we will be continuing this conversation. And of course, next month, just over a month away, giving me cold sweats, but we will be having the RSB annual conference in Geneva with a lot going on related to book and claim, but also many other relevant topics across different sectors, and with various opportunities to connect with the RSB team, with the RSB member community, and with other stakeholders. So you will be invited to join the gala dinner for the RSB Transition Leaders Awards. We also have a special edition of SAF in the City, Geneva, hosted by our friends at Sky Energy, and lots more fun things happening. And of course, the obligatory trip to the Geneva Christmas markets. So as Jill said, if you want to give yourself an early work Christmas present, this is the one. And with that, I want to thank Jennifer, Louise, and Johan for all those excellent inputs. It's really always wonderful to hear from all of you, and looking forward to also continuing the conversation in Geneva with you all. Thank you very much, and thank you, Jill, for that fantastic presentation. Cheers.
See you all in Geneva.
See you in Geneva. Bye.
Bye.